Right. Well, without further ado, welcome. Hello from HK. Hi, Xenon. Um, Welcome to today's webinar, a very special event. This is the Women in Business webinar, where we have three incredibly inspiring ladies from different corners of the globe join us today. I'm your host today and moderator, Daniel Miller. I'm the Taipei branch manager at Pagoda Projects, and it's a great honor to be here. And I would like to, without further ado, switch over to some introductions. I'll go in alphabetical order in terms of first name. So actually to my dearest old colleague, Anita, who I worked with in Chengdu back in the day in 2017-18 at the British Chamber of Commerce. Anita, over to you.
Thank you, Daniel. Hi, everyone. I think that's one of the biggest advantage to go by a starting name. So just a quick introduction about myself. My name is Anita. I'm from the Panda Land, Chengdu, China. Which is in the southwest of China. I'm very honored to be here today, and thank you very much for having me. Very excited to talk to my fellow panelists, the two other amazing ladies, and of course the amazing gentleman here, Dan, as well. So a little bit about myself. I work full-time at public affairs doing trade. And I have now a part-time job running a side business of my own about food and culture. So it's called Chengdu Food Tour. So I take people around for foods, for the best food that the city can offer. And through food, we introduce the culture, the people, everything about the city. That's my own business. And I also partially work full-time to run a professional network called She Leads in Chengdu, Kunming, and Chongqing, 3 cities in China, to connect professional females from all different industries and areas to try to empower all the women professionals in China. Yeah, so that's a little about me.
Brilliant, Anita. Thank you so much. I think next up is Jackie.
Thanks, Daniel. Anita, I'm going to have to come and visit so I can come and eat some of this food and you can show me around. That sounds really good. So I'm Jackie. I am the managing director of a marketing agency called Inkblock Creative. So we predominantly work with startup businesses and businesses that are kind of scaling and changing to support them with their marketing and their brand strategy, also PR, social media, things like that. I started that business at the end of 2019. And this year we've also started another business, because I'm a glutton for punishment, called Greenhouse, which is essentially a hub for small businesses. So people that are working for themselves in my local area. We're going to be running a kind of a conference come festival at the end of the year. And then throughout next year, we're going to have loads of workshops and things like that going on. My background is in the arts. I trained to be an actress originally and worked professionally in the theatre, and then kind of had a huge career swerve and ended up in brand for health and beauty brands. So looking after some big health and beauty brands around the UK. Before going into banking as the head of communications for a large international bank. I did that for 5 years. And then I thought, you know what, I'd quite like to start a business. So here we are. And that's me.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Yvonne.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. And I'm happy to be, honored to be here with the other panelists. And thank you for moderating, Daniel. My name's Yvonne. I'm half German, half French, and have lived most of my life in Asia, born in Hong Kong, and have been living in China for over 20 years. Since 2004, I opened up a company and we produce printed packaging, mainly for the UK high street brands, such as M&S, Tesco, Debenhams, Next, and many, many more. So what I do is I receive the artwork, the branded artwork, and we produce the packaging here in China and send the packaging to the factories that produce the product, for example, the garment, they pack it, and then they send it back to the UK and distribute it through their shops. Another side of my business is that I'm in the F&B. I've opened and created different restaurants around our city in Zhuhai. Zhuhai is based in the southern part of China, near Macau and just across the sea from Hong Kong. And we've had a lot of Western restaurants and bars and wine cellars. So that keeps me busy, the printing and packaging and the F&B business. And that's me.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. So we're ready to get started. Just before we start, just a reminder to the audience that this is a informal conversation, a fireside chat that we want you to get involved as well. So feel free to ask questions anytime, and I'll try my best to relay those questions to our diverse panel. The themes we'll be taking on today are, because we are talking to female leaders stemming from a wide array of industries and diverse backgrounds. So we like to hear, basically the professional journeys, the personal struggles, the work-life balance, and how women in general can work towards the future to further empower one another in an international business context. So I think I would like to open up with a question regarding each of yours success, because I've had a look at all your profiles on LinkedIn, your bios, and I regard you as highly successful women. And my question is, how do you personally define success in your careers? I know that's a bit of a big question to start off with.
I'm happy to jump in if you want one of us to start. So I think success is really interesting, isn't it? There's lots of different ways to measure it. I'm a big believer that you kind of get one go at this life. So for me, success is about creating a life that you are excited to show up for every day. So part of that is your job, and having something that you feel passionate about and that you feel is making a difference. I think that's really, really important. But I think it's very easy when you're running businesses to be only focused on work. But for me, a successful life is about having a life that is broad and that is not only about work, but also about having time with your friends, your family, your loved ones, and kind of giving back to your community as well. So for me, being successful is about having something you're passionate about. It's not necessarily about how much money you make or how many hours you work or what awards you win. It's about being able to show up every day and think, actually, I really enjoy this. That's success for me.
Yes, I agree. It's finding that balance. So I believe when I've opened several companies and sold several companies, at the beginning, it is a lot of work and one does forget oneself quite often. I've even had, due to work, have missed quite a few social events and family events, having had to be in different places, setting up the business. And looking back on it, I not regret, but I do take more time now to spend time with friends and family, but work just as hard. It's a matter of time management. And another thing is, what I find is, especially when I've built up teams, I find success is not only for yourself, but who you bring along with you. That I always enjoy when I have a new colleague joining the team. It takes time to get into the work, but to train them and to see their success and their way of improving and becoming more of a team and contributing to the company with their thoughts, ideas, and always be open to have people on your team that are even better than you, because they help you achieve more as well. So I find that very important as well.
I agree with both Jackie and Yvonne said. So be fulfilling to yourself is really important. And to me, like the definition of success is all about making a difference. Like you feel like every night when you go to bed that you feel fulfilled, that you've done something different. So for example, like in Shilit, we run mentorship programs where we connect young professional females with the senior female leaders. And every term when the program ends, we always host a graduation ceremony to let the young females to showcase themselves. Because to me, I think for a lot of times, actually, women don't really even get a chance to, even if they work for their whole life, they don't get a chance to actually stand up a stage to present themselves. So we always want to have a chance for them to show who they are, how they progress and everything. So it's very important. And at every graduation, you know, when we hear how they progressed over the months and how they landed a new job or started their own business or got promotion, I'm always like sitting off the stage, like listening like a very proud mother. You know, I don't think it's the program that actually changed them tremendously, but it's a little bit of push that we did to help them see their own potential. So that means quite a lot to me. It is a lot of work to run the community within 3 cities, and over now we have more than 3,000 people. So and also that's on top of my 2 other full-time jobs. So that takes a lot of energy, but having the idea and knowing that you are actually making a difference, you could, you know, like it can be a life change for even just one person. I think that's worthwhile doing it. So to me, that's very important to define like a success. Like it doesn't matter what role you're at, what job you are doing. If you are making a difference and you feel fulfilled when every night when you go to bed, then that's the most important thing.
Wow, some excellent responses there. I mean, the common theme I keep seeing is that it's almost like I keep hearing sort of waking up every day. There's a consistent motivation. There's a consistent sort of fire, and there's do something that is of meaning. I'm very curious following my question. Basically, you know, as a graduate and as a lot of the audience are, you know, in 2nd or 3rd years or about to graduate, you know, as a graduate, I was a bit lost in terms of my professional career. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what meaning meant. And it took me, I think, a long time to get there, to be honest. I would like to ask you a bit of a personal question. I mean, what in part of the journey did you realize what doing something meaningful meant, or when did you suddenly wake up and think, actually, I'm getting onto something here. I'm a bit of a success.
I don't know if you ever think that, do you? I think that's, I think, you know, my biggest learning, because, you know, I mentioned I had a massive career swerve, but I'm a really impatient person. So I've always had this thing where I'm like, I've got to be doing. But the reality is there's no rush, right? There's absolutely no rush. Things happen in the time they're meant to happen. And I think as I get older, I understand more that it's that, you know, everything happens in the order it should happen when you're ready to do it. Because there might be opportunities that present themselves to you that you feel like you have to take, but they might not be right for you today. They might be right for you in 5 years, 10 years. You've got a long life ahead of you. So I think when you leave university or you're graduating, it feels like you have to, in the next 5 years, I have to be doing all these things. And the reality is you don't. You've got your whole life to figure out what, you know, what success means to you, and also what's going to give you that motivation. I have had so many things I've done throughout my life that in hindsight, I'm like, well, that was a bit of a tangent, but actually I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now if I hadn't have had those experiences. So, you know, I think that, yeah, there's no rush. It all happens in good time.
Yes, I agree. And one thing that I would really advise everyone, even during university, you know, in the summer holidays, to get summer holiday jobs. And even if it is in a supermarket and you have to carry boxes from one aisle to the warehouse or back, or if it's in a bar pouring drinks, or even washing glasses. My first job was washing plates in the kitchen in a cafe. Not the best job on earth, but it made me, it makes you humble. It's, you know, if you want to go to a restaurant, you need clean plates and somebody has to do it. And throughout my, you know, throughout my life, I wasn't quite sure what to do. But I did a lot of internships, even if it was just for a month or 3 months. And often people think, right, I'm going to become this, you know, really big corporate communications manager. And then if you are in that department, corporate communications, for example, it might not be something that is really that right for you, but you won't know it until you try it. Yes, people, you know, often if somebody wants to be a doctor, that's really quite a passion, and that's a bit different. But in business, if you try lots of different jobs, you will find more, you will know more about yourself. You will know your capabilities, your strengths, but you will also find out your weaknesses. So something you might be really interested in may not always be something that is right for you. So try out different things. Also, don't be afraid to totally change and try something new. I mean, do calculated risks. I mean, don't just go, oh, you know, throw the towel in and run off. I mean, do check it out. But the more work experience you have in different fields and different sectors, the more you will know about yourself. And it is like a feeling of success and learning. So the more you learn, the broader your view, and you find out more about yourself, and that's what's important.
100%.
Yeah, just a little to add on top of that. I completely agree. Experience is really, really important. And also, it is okay to not know what you want. Then there's no rush in like, oh, I have to wake up today, you know, knowing my big dream and what I want to achieve. It is completely okay to not know what you want. And I'm quite against the idea of a perfectionist. A lot of people always say I'm a perfectionist and I always want to, you know, wait until everything is ready, then I do it. But you don't have to be perfect in order to do something. Be open to the options, experience as much as you can. And once you did it, if it's good outcome, you know how to continue. And if it turned out bad, you know how to think of ways to either fix it or drop it, right? And if it doesn't work, then you know that what you don't like. So it's important to find out what you like, but it's also important to know what you don't want and what you don't like.
Can I throw something else in there, Daniel? Is that okay?
Of course.
Because Yvonne and Anita have just sparked a thought. I think one of my biggest learnings throughout my kind of journey to running multiple businesses is that people will always have an opinion. So friends will have an opinion, your family will have an opinion, your mum will have an opinion, your gran will have an opinion, people you don't know have an opinion. And it's really easy, especially when you're starting out and you're trying to figure out what you want to do, to listen to all these opinions. And then it gets even more confusing because you don't know, and then they're all telling you different things. So I think, you know, bearing in mind that you're the one that has to live your life. You're the one that has to go to work and do this job every day, whether it's running a big multinational, whether it's washing plates in a restaurant, right? You have to get up and do it. So being able to kind of take those opinions on board, but also know that it's your decision ultimately what you do is really important. And just because other people don't think things are going to work doesn't always mean that that's the case. You know, when I started a business, my family were like, "You're mad, you're quitting a really good job, what are you going to do?" Well, they don't have to do it, I do. And that's okay. And they're saying that because they love me and they want to make sure I'm all right. But actually, if you've got a goal in your head, it's only up to you that you kind of do those things.
That's really, really powerful. It's essentially grabbing control of your agency, essentially, because probably I felt lost because I had friends who was like, Dad, you need a 5-year plan. You need to work out how you're going to get there. And Anita, like completely, instead of having, an actual goal, I reverse engineered it. I basically was like, oh, these are the things I actually don't like. I don't want to be so and so. I don't want to. I've meet various leaders, managers, and I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. And so those experiences are the most formative, where you actually meet, or you suddenly encounter something that you don't really like at all. Going on from, in terms of all three of you run very successful businesses in the past. I've got a question here from our very own Paul Bailey from Pagoda. So, do you feel like you were prepared for the amount of work and commitment required to run your respective businesses or business? And if not, do you think the past version of yourselves would have still done it if you truly knew what you were getting into? So essentially, any regrets along the way?
That's such a good question, isn't it? I don't think anyone would start a business if they had a go at it and then had a chance to look back, because it is a lot of work. But also, I think it builds on what Yvonne was saying before. Every job you have, whether it's washing plates in a restaurant or running a huge team for a corporate business, by the time you get to running your own business, you will have learnings from every single one of those jobs that help you. I've had some horrific jobs in my time, hated them when I was doing them, and now I'll be doing something in my business and I think, oh, I know how to do that because of that thing that happened 10 years ago. So I think that as you kind of move through that journey of building a business, you have to wear a lot of different hats. Especially at the beginning, before you're at a point where you can hire and things like that, you're the accountant, you're the HR lady, you're the person that cleans the bathroom, you're the one that buys the milk for the fridge, you're the one that has to go out and find new business, you have to do you do everything. And you're not going to be good at everything. So I think that in those early days, that resilience is what keeps you going. And I think that that's probably the biggest skill that anyone can build to have a successful career, is resilience. Because I think if you get into business, you have to just keep going and you have to be able to look after yourself so that you are able to do that. But you also have to know, I don't have to be, I'm awful with numbers and my accounts and all that stuff. But obviously before you get an accountant, you have to do those things. And I hated doing it, but you have to do it. And you also have to understand it before you pass it to somebody else. So you have to just get your head down and you have to know that it's not forever. So I think, the skills you learn throughout your career, they build up to get you to a point where you're able to do it. But I don't think anyone is ever ready for the job that they're in. I just think we're all pretending. It's like the older you get, the more you realize that all grown-ups are just pretending to be grown-ups and no one really knows what they're doing. And that's okay. Like, it's okay, because we're all in the same boat. And as long as you're doing it with integrity and you're trying your best and you're doing things from, a good place and aligned to your values, I don't think that's a bad thing.
I agree. I can't add too much to that. But of course, I think if you have an idea, let's say even a product, I think what is important is that you need to research in advance a little bit, how do I get this onto market? What finance do I need? Try to make a very generous budget, because one always forgets a lot of nitty-gritty bits where money is required here and there. If you do have partners, make sure to have a contract, even if they are really good friends, because often if it does succeed or get going, little arguments can start and they can become into really big arguments. So that one never knows what is ahead of oneself. So I would still take the same route. What I'm open to is I don't actually mind making mistakes, or sometimes decisions weren't quite right, but from that way you learn, and you create a better self, and you're much quicker at being able to make decisions, and also building up a team. For me, at one point, a team is really important for me, because you can't do everything on your own, but you have to treat them the same as you want to be treated. And so, yep, I would do the same as before. Have all the same headaches and still have them.
I think all the entrepreneurs probably share the same experience. Just always be prepared that you won't be prepared enough. So you'll be, like Jackie was mentioned, you'll be an accountant, you'll be a designer, you'll be a photographer, you'll be all in one. So that take it as also an experience or a chance to train yourself to be multifunctional.
And it sounds, I guess, growth only happens when you're really challenged like that in lots of different aspects. I think one thing that I took away from Yvonne as well, building up a team, this leads into the next question really, like as you sort of build a team around you, all three of you have, in terms of leadership, what type of sort of mentors did you have, like growing up or after university? How did you sort of go into leadership? Like, did you ever think you were like a born leader? One example I like to share with myself is that, you know, when I was growing up, it was like there was like a very gendered connotation to leadership. Like when it, you know, because I grew up partly in Asia, I grew up in the UK, and it was a very sort of militaristic ideal of a captain, or a captain of a sports team, of someone very inspirational, of someone very so I was sort of like brainwashed into thinking of that one type of leader. So I want to ask you, in terms of when you were developing your businesses, what type of role models and mentors did you have access to?
We're all thinking now, aren't we? I was very lucky growing up. My mum was a woman who had no formal education qualifications, but went on to start multiple businesses and lead multiple large organizations, just because she was really good at it. And I think growing up, seeing a woman doing that was really inspirational for me, because it kind of showed me, oh, if she can do it, I can definitely do it, right? And I think that there is something about seeing people like you doing things that lets you know it's possible. Obviously, I have a lot of privilege. I'm white, I live in the UK. So, you know, I've had throughout my career, definitely all the time, I'm often the only woman in the room. My industry is very male dominated, although that is changing, which is good. But I am also very aware that although I experience a lot of times when I'm the only woman in the room, I'm also white. So, you know, what if I was the only woman in the room and I was a person of color, or I was part of the LGBTQIA community, you know? So I think that it's really important, and Yvonne mentioned this before, that if you find yourself in a position where you can build a team, that you also open doors for people who may not have access to the rooms that you're in. I think that there was a bit of a vibe in like the 80s where women, power suits on, climbed to the boardroom, slammed the door behind us so that no one else could come with us, and basically pretended we were men. But I think as the time's gone on, I think it is obvious now, and the Parker Review that was launched in 2017 has been calling for the FTSE 100 companies to have more diversity on their boards. And the reason for this is because they know that boards that are running companies, you need diversity of thought. Now, that doesn't always mean, you know, if I built a board that was all women, that's still not diversity. We have to build teams where people think differently to us, have had different life experiences to us, have been through different things to us. And it's not just about what we look like, it's about those experiences. And if you are building a team and you can open those doors for other people, that's probably the most powerful thing you can do, because it's the only way that it'll move that kind of tide. So I think, for me, I've had mentors who are women, who are men, who have done similar jobs to me, different jobs to me, but the resounding kind of learning I've had from those people that have guided me is always to be very true to your own values and stay in integrity, and also to make sure that you are bringing people along with you, because the job of a leader is partly to be that visionary and to sell that mission so that people want to come with you. And I think that's probably one of the most important things we can all do.
Yes, I mean, I've had not specific mentors, although I always watched the directors or managers who were in charge of me, how they handle it, and learned from them good points, and also some ways how not to do it. And then you create your own picture of what you think is how others should be treated, not only in the workplace, but also, I go to a lot of factories and work with people in factories, the machine operators, for example. And you can't just walk in and say, right, you get on with it. You have to have a connection and communication with them. Like in printing, you have to get the color right. But we all see color in a bit of a different way. So if you can't communicate with the chap who's pressing the buttons that the color is not quite where it should be, it can cause problems. But then also in the same factory, you have to be able to sit and chat with a big boss and drink tea with him and respect him, but make sure that he knows what you want and why you're there. So it's for me, communication is very, very, very important. But communicating with people in all parts of a company or of a factory. For example, the cleaning lady is just as important as the accountant or the designer. I mean, everybody has their role. And I've always made sure that I can communicate absolutely with everybody from top to bottom, and also learn from them. So mentors are not always people who may be, older, better than you, but you can learn something from everybody you meet. I really believe that.
Yeah, just to add on what Yvonne said, I really agree, because mentorship is multifunctional. It's never just like one direction from a senior to a junior level. So we can always learn from everyone's unique. Everyone's got their own expertise. For me, I'm quite lucky to be surrounded by a lot of amazing women, I have to say. First, my mom is also a very strong businesswoman, and the whole Southwest region in China, for some people who are not familiar with, is quite a strong woman-dominated era. Actually, we eat spicy food here. We also call the girls are spicy girls here. Dan has a very good idea about that. So luckily, there are a lot of like very independent women running their own businesses. So it's a very good vibe here. For me, like how I started She Leads is also just simply because I was at my own career transition, and I was trying to look for a mentor who can think from my end and give me some advice, but I couldn't find a local program that does mentorship. So that's why I talked to a couple of the senior female leaders in my own network and told them about my idea, and they were like, oh, that's great, then why don't we do it together? So that's the whole beginning of how we started the Shili. So we built the mentorship program together to try to connect more young female with senior female leaders. So it is really important to create this environment that it's supportive for women, especially young females, that they feel like they have somewhere that they can seek for help and that they can get supported. That's also, I think, why it's really important for us to have this conversation right here, because when you become a leader, you bring out the influential decisions to your workplace, and how you see that benefits the whole workplace. It's what's gonna change the whole workplace. So that's why having the role models and having the conversations going on, it's important for us to simply build a better workplace together.
Mm.
It's very clear, Anita, as well, and the common place with you, Jackie, and Yvonne, is creating a space to empower, not just judged by gender, but Yvonne, from your point on the factory floor, when you're communicating, you're taking a leadership role, in my view, of basically treating everyone equally with respect, which I think everyone should be. Anita and Jackie, in terms of empowering people in the workplace, in terms of creativity, I've got a question that I want to go that's sort of linked to a Q&A just had. It's a question about gender again. It's basically, what are the challenges that you have faced, maybe in your context, in your professional life, in your career, that have had a sort of a lasting impression? Like, what challenges have you faced and how did you deal with them?
That's such a good question. I've gone into meetings where I've been given the coats, meetings that I'm running, and they just assume I'm there to take the coats and make the tea, and then you have to be, oh no, sorry, actually, not to see. Things like that. You know, I've taken male colleagues with me to meetings, and the whole pitch has been directed at them, and then, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's happening less and less, I think, but it does still happen. But as much as things like that are annoying in the moment, and it's easy to get annoyed about, I think you have to take a learning from things like that. And the learning for me is that you must never assume. So you never know who anyone is, but you also never know who anyone might end up being. So I think it's really important. I think there is, you know, a lot of businesses are very hierarchical, and Yvonne put it really well, that you have to learn in business to be able to communicate with everyone, and also understand that a business cannot run if everybody is not doing their job correctly. You know, I come from a theatre background, and there's a common kind of thing there that you can be the biggest star in the world, but if the lighting guy doesn't put the lights on you, nobody can see what you're doing, right? So you have to be, everybody has a part to play. So as much as it's not always nice to come across things like that, and, you know, horrible things that happen maybe in your career, it's important to take a learning from it. And for me, that is, you can never assume, you know, who people are, but you can also never assume who they might end up being. You might have somebody that's working on your factory floor today who might go on to run your biggest competitor in 10 years' time. You don't know what people are going to do. So it's important to be respectful and also get to know everybody and get to know their skills. And you know, that's what true networking is about, isn't it? It's about building a network of people where you can collaborate and share things as well.
I've had similar experience, you know, pitching ideas with your male partner, and you said like completely the same thing. Like I said it once, and then he summarized the second time, and then all the counterparts will be like, oh yeah, that's right, what he said. I was like, I exactly just said the same thing, you know. But it is a common, you know, I've had a phase that I'm not a very big tall person, I'm quite small, so I'll put on, you know, high heels, and I'll wear like a very mature, try to act like more mature than my actual age is, just, you know, to show that I'm more powerful. But Actually, you don't need to do all of that. But if you feel more comfortable in high heels or like put on makeups or red lipsticks and do that. Like if that makes you more comfortable, do that for yourself, but not for the look that other people perceive you. Because it's all about being authentic and how your ideas, how your voice will actually convince the people that what you say matters. And just really, be proactive and have confidence in how you think, and you really matter, your ideas matter. Like go into a meeting, do not sit in the corner of the table, try to sit to the front. And if you have an opinion, if somebody asks for an opinion, raise your hand and talk about it. And if somebody like, interrupt you and say, excuse me, I'm going to finish my sentence and this is how I think. And it's really important to like really stand for your own ideas and put yourself at a place where people can see it.
100%.
Yes, I agree with both Jackie and Anita. Of course, sometimes wearing a business suit and walking in, with your shoulders high and your attaché case will show, right, I'm here for business. But it is not always that necessary. One experience which I will remember, or which I do remember, was in the 90s. And like Jackie was saying, I grew up in a time where it was really 80s, 90s, Power Women, all the movies were like that in that era. So my father always told me, Yvonne, you have to learn how hard it is to earn $1. So it's not a matter of, what you look like, it's what you are capable of and what you're doing. And that's what I will always remember. And I remember going into a meeting and nobody took me seriously. I was the only woman and I knew it. You can feel the vibe. And this was in the 90s. They thought, okay, this young girl, well, she can sort of sit here and listen. And like Anita said, no, put your foot down, talk, sit in the middle. And the whole atmosphere changed. The whole atmosphere, once they realized, oh, she actually knows what she's talking about and it's making sense. Or we're looking at it from a different angle now. So be confident. You won't know everything, but be confident in what you do know, because that's a way people will surprise. They'll be surprised. I like surprising people. It's fun because you get put down or given the code, and then suddenly everybody at the end of the meeting are like wanting to talk to you. And so it's quite fun, that change of atmosphere.
I think one of the big surprises I went through, I think, Jackie, I don't know if you've seen this in young professionals, but when I came out of university, I sort of subscribed to this idea of a successful young man just striding, as you said, Yvonne, striding in your business suit and just being very confident, sort of playing up to that role. And then just really quickly realizing, I don't want to play this role. I want to drop that bravado. Why am I doing this? Why am I pretending to be the Wolf of Wall Street whilst in a meeting room? Why am I projecting this identity? And I think that the biggest lessons I learned in business, and I think is when you're in a meeting and you go, I don't know. Yeah. Because you do realize when people just sort of make up answers or they wing it. But I found the biggest when someone really respects you, when you go, sorry, I just really don't know what I'm talking about in this aspect. But I know what I'm talking about in this aspect because I've done a lot of work here.
And you can always go and find out, right? You can always go and find out. You don't have to have the answer for everything right then and there.
Exactly. I mean, in terms of going back to communication, we've got a great question from Mark. What is the most successful technique for successful human communication in business? I believe, Yvonne, you touched upon this before. Yeah, I would like to hear all your sort of tips.
What I think, when I arrive, for example, in a networking event, I try to meet everybody there and have a conversation with them. Or what I find very important is to shake a hand and to look into the person's eyes. I think that's a good technique to use, and ask questions, and listen to the answers. Often people ask questions and they don't listen to the answers. And then if there's an interest, it's always good to, connect in either via LinkedIn or the old-fashioned way with name cards. And it's just important to communicate face to face. I always find, and now with the news, since the COVID, we're using video conference calls a lot more. It does help than just emails or messages. I think the one-on-one communicating with people is the most important. Eye contact.
I absolutely love this question. So my business is obviously marketing and communication. So this is what I talk about all day, every day. And I completely agree with everything Yvonne's just said there. And something you mentioned there was about listening. And I think the most underrated communication skill is listening. Because we think about communication as what can I say? But it should be about what can I learn? Because we need to think about what's our objective when we meet someone. Is it to tell them everything we can about us? Or is it to find out as much about them as we can so that we can figure out how we can help them? And, I would always err on that second one. And I think very often we listen to talk. We don't listen to understand. So everyone's been in that situation, haven't they, where someone's talking and you don't hear a word they're saying because you're just thinking, oh, when they finish talking, what am I going to say? So I would say that if, of all the skills that you can hone in your career, becoming a really active, good listener, somebody who can really take in what's being told to them and distill it, sounds really simple, but not everybody is great at it. And I always think the best leaders are people that listen very well. And then my second tip would be to think about when you are talking about what you do, to think about how you can position that in the kind of eyes of your audience. So if you ever go on a website, for example, and it says, we do this and we do that, and we're great at this, and we got these awards, and you're like, all right, I don't care. What can you do for me? Right? We always want to know what that person can do for us. So if you are going into business, or you're thinking about, how to introduce yourself at events and things like that, really thinking about, rather than just saying, I'm Jackie and I do X, Y, Z, think about kind of how can you show who you help and why you help them, because that's going to be much more engaging for your audience.
I've been just listening. Nothing to
Very good.
I think adding to Jackie's point, like one key skill that I realized with communication, I think Mark in the chat has just, what kind of question do you ask? The type of question I usually ask is, when you actively listen and then you communicate back, is this actually what you meant? To the person who's actually said it. So and then you establish a connection of what sense or meaning they get. I think those are the most important questions. And Mark has said, what do you think of encouraging people to say what they like and do not like? What do you think of encouraging people? How do you empower people to say how do you empower people to say we're not comfortable in saying? I think that is the question.
So I think it's about how you position things, isn't it? So for example, if I ever go to a new business meeting, I always start off by saying, right, where do you want to be? What's the goal? If you could have it what's success for you? Because then that gets people in a positive mind thinking, oh, I want it to be this, this, and this, and that's all exciting. And I'm going to tell you all the things I want. And then the follow-up question to that is then, okay, so what's stopping you from getting there? Because then they can go, oh, well, actually all these things. And then now you know both sides of the story. So I think it's about putting the onus on the person you're talking to. So just like Daniel was saying there, you know, making sure that you're really listening and then you're replaying that back to them to show understanding. And sometimes people are going to tell you stuff they don't like. And sometimes, especially when you're running a business, that feels really awful. If you spend loads of time and someone goes, that's rubbish, I don't like it. But you have to take that, probably, you know, have a box of ice cream or a glass of wine or whatever it is and relax and then come back to it the next day and think, okay, that's obviously something that we might need to learn from or change. And that can be hard, but you still have to think about it in that way. What can I take away from this to make it better for the next person?
I think for communication, like what we are all afraid of is the awkwardness. Sometimes you don't know what to say, especially going to like a social networking event and you wanna connect with people, but you always think like, what should I say? What should I not say? What if I say this, somebody is not interested? And that's always the awkwardness. Just also thanks to the, you know, the modern technology. I don't know how is it in the UK nowadays, but in China, everyone's on the phone, you know, like when you don't know what to say, you just always look at your phones. But take the opportunities of every chance that you go into networking, especially I think for women, that's something that we don't think it's as important, or we don't think that we are good at. So a lot of times we'll feel like, you know, I don't want to push myself to someone to, you know, to talk about myself, and you're shy, you don't know what to talk about. But be prepared before you go into a networking event, like knowing who the audience will be, and do some homework, have like a list of backup questions that you can, or backup topics that you can talk about, you know, not just the weather, but what you do, who you really are, and what you are good at, and try to find a common connection with people that you are talking with. You know, you can get information from them, and people always like to talk about themselves. So ask the questions that you know what they will be interested in talking, and then be a good listener, just like what we said from the last part.
And also remember with networking, I remember, Anita, with lots of our networking events in Chengdu, I met a lot of people that I didn't enjoy what they said, but and I sort of had to pretend for 10 minutes, like nodding, but then I realized actually you can politely say, I'm just going to go over there and grab another drink, can I grab you something else? Like you don't have to, sometimes being listening, but being genuine, being sincere is a very important quality as well. I think that with that, Anita, taking the plunge about women, like young women going networking more, experiencing all this stuff. This is a recurring theme in our chat of sort of taking the plunge into the deep end and sort of figuring out. It's the joy. You're going to learn a lot of stuff from that. One of the questions we got from the Q&A is quite similar to that, in the sense that when you graduated, I guess, when you just came out of university, was there a risk that you wished you took, or is there something you wished you did straight after university? Me, I wish I walked around the world a bit more. If I could look in the future and see the pandemic, I would have found some time to walk around the world a bit more. How about you?
Me?
All three of you?
I think I would also like take, because I actually did my higher education abroad, did my bachelor's in the US and my master's in the UK. And straight after graduation, from my master's degree, I went straight back home actually just for a short vacation because my sister was having a baby, so I wanted to be there for her. But then like everything happened, I kind of just stayed. I joined a business and then started my own business. So everything just happened. I guess if I could have done it again, I wish I would have worked abroad somewhere before, you know, settling back down at my hometown. Which doesn't mean that I'm gonna stay here forever. I'm still open to the options, but I think working and living in a different country, in a different culture is always a plus experience that, you know, that help you to open your eyesight to the world. You experience different things. You don't take things for granted, especially when you are encountering different culture. You know, the people who work around you eat differently, work in different style, talk a different language. So you start to not take things for granted, but try to adapt to the local environment. So that's a really good experience. So that's also what Pagoda is doing. So I think that's really important for anyone to, you know, just gain different perspectives and also, you know, learn to respect the difference between the people that you work with. And essentially we are you know, global citizen. You wanted to be able to adapt to anywhere you go.
Yes, I absolutely agree with Anita. I've been very lucky. I've worked in the UK, in France, Germany, Luxembourg, and in Asia, in Hong Kong, China. And having been brought up in Asia, my first 14 years, I grew up in Southeast Asia, finished school in England, did my BA in the UK, and then took 2 years out after school. I spent a year in Germany and a year in France, just to be in the countries of my parents. During this time, where I worked, just got to know the country, the people, the culture. I knew Asia better than I knew Europe. Called an egg, white on the outside, yellow on the inside. It was the expression at the time. But unfortunately now with the situation with COVID and traveling being so difficult, it is an absolute shame not to be able, you know, to go and visit and be in different cultures. Like Anita said, I think it's so important to understand not only the culture and the people, but also understand the religions. Not all of them are extreme. Learn from food. Food is always a good way to meet people. And so Anita's idea to show the restaurants in her city or in the different cities it's really fantastic. What I would advise is also read a bit about the history and definitely learn at least 10-20 words. I mean, it starts with hello, thank you, bye-bye, may I order a beer, or a noodle soup. So just a few words, and it just shows that you're making an effort, and gives you a chance to meet local people. From them you learn a lot as well. Travel once it's possible.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that I think the question was, you know, is there anything you would have done differently? And I've lived all over the world and have been very lucky to do so. And I think that I've worked since I was 14, but I took some time out to go traveling. By that I mean about 3 years, where I kind of worked on enough and just saved up loads of money and then lived really frugally. And I think that is probably something I'd recommend. You know, you have probably, when you leave university, another 45 years of your working life left. You've got a lot of time to work. So if you can do other things, that's really important. But in terms of things that I wish I'd kind of done at the beginning that I maybe didn't do, was I think an understanding of money and the financial economy is really important. I think we're not taught enough about it. You know, I was schooled in the UK. Understanding how money works, how money makes money, how investment works, where you should be putting the money you have. I think that, you know, there's lots of books and lots of things that you can read to understand that better. And understanding that when you're young means you can start doing things that will have a knock-on effect for your future. I'm not somebody that thinks that you have to have a lot of money to be successful or have a nice life, but you know, you can make your money work better for you if you understand how that works. And I'm in my mid-30s now, running 2 businesses, thinking, oh God, now I've got to learn how all of that works. And I wish I'd learned that 10 years ago. So I would definitely say, you know, focus on an understanding of the financial economy.
Brilliant stuff. That would have been a really lovely place to finish today's session, but I just want to slide in one last question from Emma, which is a great question before we finish. It's about, when going into a male-dominated field, how have you created more accessibility for women? For example, creating policy change for maternity, for menopause support, etc. So I'm not sure if anyone, have you created more accessibility?
So I think you have to be the change you want to see, right? So in my industry, one of our biggest challenges is the pay gap. So in the marketing industry, I think most women and men, when they start out, you know, in junior marketing roles, are on the same wage. By the time we get to chief marketing officer, board level marketing directors, there's about a £10,000 pay gap of a man and a woman doing the same job by the time we get there. So for me, having we have a real focus in our businesses on paying everybody an equal wage and making sure that that is, you know, that's just how we operate. We don't pay people based on where they come from, who they are, what gender they are, anything like that. We pay them based on the job they're doing. So I think that it can be hard going into large corporate environments and trying to change things. But if you are starting something for yourself, you can do what you like. So if you think that's important, you can do that. And then, you know, the more businesses that are started and do things like that, the more it becomes the norm, which means the weirder it is for the businesses that don't do it. So then it's kind of, you know, the change happens in that way. To kind of, that's what I think about that.
Yes, and you know, I'm just seeing from the question, like creating policy change for maternity or menopause support. I mean, in my company, I had, well, being in China, we have to follow the laws anyway, right? So maternity law is maternity law. And I've had 3 of my employees who have had children within the last 10 years. For a small company, it's quite tough to have support the ladies who are not at work, but you have to follow the law. And it worked out for us. They even at one point said, oh, I have to be at home, but can I still work on some projects on the side? So it's up to the ladies what they want to do. What we did afterwards as well in the company, once they came back to work and later the children are at school, I was very flexible that if the parents, the mother or father in the company had to go to school plays or parents meetings, that was always allowed. For us, the working hours were quite flexible. You had to work your 8 hours, but if you came in at 11 in the morning, you know, then you just left maybe an hour or 2 later than usual. As long as the job was done. And I said to my colleagues, we spend a lot of time together. It's very important to also be at home and spend time with family and children. So Saturday and Sunday was always the weekend. It was always off. And if on a Friday afternoon, if we got our job done, we didn't need to leave at 6 or 7. I'd say, right, at 5 o'clock, we're done. Let's have a good weekend. So a bit of flexibility is necessary. in the past, I used to work weekends practically all the time. And also being a mother myself, my son is now 22, but for 15 years, you know, when he was little, I did spend a bit too much time away from him sometimes, which was not easy, but we got through it. And so time for family, just going back, it's really important. And looking after the women who are working, who have children or need maternity leave, yeah.
Yeah. Regarding the maternity leave, actually, China has 6 months for a woman, so that's above average days for maternity leave worldwide, I think. But I agree, like what Yvonne said, what we need to do is also have a, like a better awareness of how the responsibilities were distributed among the family. Because in China, for example, we have 5 months for women, but only 15 days for the husband. And I know in like countries like Sweden, they have a year. And equally split between the husband and the wife. So it's also about like a mindset changing, not just for maternity leave, but also in female leadership in general. Like how do men perceive the responsibility and as their role, in this, like because we always say like taking care of the family is it's a part of the responsibility of a woman, but for men, it's they're nice if they do it, so it's about changing the perspective and awareness as well. I work at the Consulate General of Israel in Chengdu, the Trade Department. We have 5 offices in China, actually all female trade directors. So that is amazing to see the 100% of a woman power there. So I guess it's not equal to our male counterpart there. But in fact, we know that the gender equality exists in every sector. Actually, according to like a World Gender Gap report, I did the homework for this, that it actually will take still 135.6 years to close the gender gap worldwide. So there's still a lot of work to do for sure. Like no matter is the policy changing or as what we mentioned before, just the entire workplace needs to be more together in this. Gender equality is never just a woman's issue, it's a human's issue. So like what She Leads does for us, like creating more accessibility for women is just to raise the awareness, create more conversations like this. We host events, we host panel discussions, and we invite males to join, not just women, but also males to act as male champions to push the female leadership together.
Well, I hope it's much, much, much less than 135 years to shorten that gap. And I hope, the audience today, I'm definitely inspired, and I hope you've definitely been inspired by the stories and the different journeys of these 3 incredible women. It's been it's been an amazing hour for me to host and moderate this. Thank you all so much for your time. And good evening from Taipei. And actually, for the audience, if you don't mind me saying, are all 3 of you available on LinkedIn if anyone wants to follow up with questions?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, I encourage you to definitely get in touch and stay in touch. It's been great, and good evening from Taipei, and have a great rest of the week and weekend.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Anita, Jackie.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
Thank you all for listening.